Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Patrick Elliott. I'm the legal director here at FFRF. And I've been with FFRF for 15 years and been going to conventions just as long. And the convention is always a welcoming place for us staff, and so I do want to, it feels really good to be here with you all. And it reminded me of the last time I was in South Carolina was 12 years ago. FFRF had been hearing a lot of school complaints, problems within the public school system. And that year, I was invited to speak to school superintendents and school board members in South Carolina who did not want to hear what we had to say about what they were doing wrong in terms of operating their schools. So this audience, I think, already has a better handle on the First Amendment issues and is certainly more welcoming to us as staff. And so for the legal report today, or the legal highlights, I'm going to kind of do an overall summary. I'll introduce some of our staff and kind of hit the overall themes, and then we have other staff that will hit some points today. So we have Liz Cavell is our Deputy Legal Director. She went to Tulane University School of Law. She's been with FFRF for almost 13 years. Sammi Lawrence is a staff attorney, and she will provide an update on our advocacy efforts. Sammi is a graduate of the great University of Wisconsin Law School and has been with FFRF as an attorney for 3 years. And senior counsel Sam Grover will talk about our lawsuits. Sam is a graduate of Boston University School of Law, and he has been with FFRF for 12 years. So these are the attorneys, but it's not just us. We have a whole legal staff. And some of them are here today. We want to make sure, if you have questions about our legal work, you can talk to us attorneys, or you can talk to some of our staff. Over to the side stage here, we have Greta Martins is our legal office manager, Matt Langer is our legal intake manager, and Kyle Steinberg is an attorney and legal fellow at FFRF. So our work really involves all of these people. Some of them couldn't be here today. Thank you all. And we also... And I wanted to flag, we will have time for questions. And so some people have already submitted questions. There was a little QR code on the screen that we've put up before. I'm not sure if we still even have that available. Or there was written cards. So if you have submitted a question or you want to do so, you can use the QR code to do so. We're going to take some written questions at the end. If we don't have time for all of your questions or it doesn't get asked, find any of us. We're happy to talk with you about the work that we do, and we really do enjoy, meeting and discussing issues with the folks that are here today. I mentioned our legal staff, but we also had some interns this year. They came from a number of different, both undergraduate law schools. We had people from the University of Pennsylvania, the University of Wisconsin, Yale, and Oxford, helping us out in the legal work that we do. And because we're in South Carolina, I wanted to highlight, we heard from Herb Silverman on some of the work that he's done in the state, and I wanted to highlight some of the work that we've done over the last few years. And actually, it starts quite a long time ago. One of the first cases I worked on was about a graduation prayer lawsuit in public schools. And so here you can see, I think we've got the three students, Jacob, Max, and Dakota, who challenged their school's practice of having prayers at their graduation ceremonies. And thanks to the lawsuit, the district rescinded that policy and ultimately settled the graduation prayer issue. And more recently, in 2022, the state legislature approved $1.5 million to go to Christian learning centers of Greenville County. And the only thing that this learning center does is provide Bible instruction to public school students. There was no other secular potential purpose for this activity. We sued, and after the lawsuit proceeded, in August of 2023, Christian Learning Centers withdrew its request for the funding, and the state funding never actually went to the organization. And we also have, Annie Laurie teased this a little bit, I'll tease it one more time. We have a new lawsuit that was filed just this month in South Carolina. And so Sam will talk a little bit more about that case that was just recently filed. So that's some of our state legal work, but I wanted to hit a few of the larger national themes. And when I talk to people this year, when I tell them where I work, they usually say something like, "Oh, you must be so busy," or "Oh, that must be so hard right now." And yes, I think both of those things are true. there are a lot of difficulties, but there's also some hope, and we are making progress on a number of things. And one of the reasons for the problems are the United States Supreme Court. This term, most recent term, took 3 cases relating to religion issues. And I think it's instructive of how the court doesn't see things the way that a lot of us do and the way that a lot of Americans do. There were several cases relating to religion, and I want to talk about one of those. That's this case, Mahmoud versus Taylor. And this is a case where, in Maryland, a school district adopted a policy to include storybooks in its offerings that would be available to teachers. And these books included themes and characters from people who are LGBTQ+. And parents, a group of parents who are religious, sued, and they wanted to have notice about the use of the books and wanted to opt out. And so really what they wanted to do was to control what was going to happen in the classroom. And functionally, we know this is not workable for teachers. Teachers could not implement any use of these books if they had to know each and every student who could participate. And it's worth looking at one of the books in terms of the religion claim. So I have a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old, so I've been reading a lot of children's books. This is also why I start to get a lot of gray in my beard. If you haven't noticed that over the years, it's getting more gray. But one of the books is this book, Uncle Bobby's Wedding. And so what is wrong with this book? If you're thinking of reading it, I'm going to spoil the whole thing. So it's a story about a niece who is worried that she's going to lose her uncle when he gets married, and she's going to spend less time with him. So it's really a story about family, a pretty normal theme for a child to think that they're going to be missing someone. Other than the fact that the book includes people that reflect the reality of the US population, there is nothing that relates to religion in the book. So here's an excerpt. So her uncle is going to be marrying a man. So this is just an excerpt. "But," said Chloe. "But what?" asked Uncle Bobby. "But I still don't think you should get married. I want us to keep having fun together like always." It's a pretty typical storybook, right? Well, according to the US Supreme Court, which also ruled on a number of other materials that were used, in a 6-3 decision in June, they ruled in favor of the parents, finding that they had a free exercise right that was burdened by the state's failure to provide notice and opt-out relating to use of the storybooks. And so to give you an idea of what we have to contend with nationally, we also have to often point out the obvious, that something religious is religious. And as many of you know, we are involved in a number of lawsuits over 10 Commandments postings that are required in public school classrooms. And so we have a local news clip out of Texas that speaks to that issue.
Here's what parents at Oak Creek Elementary said about the idea of a state mandate to post the 10 Commandments.
I don't really care if they have it up as long as they're not pushing religion with it.
So that gives you an idea, of what we have to contend with. But everything's not gloom and doom when it comes to the work we do. At a broad level, we do have things to celebrate, and we do have renewed energy. Some of the reasons for optimism, first, is just that we are right. We are right about the separation of state and church. In the US, we have constitutional protections that do not permit government officials to abuse their power to institute their religion. And yes, there have been setbacks, but largely the American public agrees with us that about this principle, and we are finding allies to stand behind us. And so that brings me to my second point. We are working increasingly in coalitions. So we are working with partner groups to navigate new attacks on our secular government, especially when it comes to our public education system, and our joint work is producing excellent results. And third, in the face of new threats, we are making strategic moves to protect state-church separation. I'm not going to give you the secret sauce to everything we're doing, but I will highlight a few of those. First, we're making it a priority to reinforce protections within state constitutions. A few years ago, I was at a conference where a Minnesota Supreme Court justice was talking, and he said outright, look, we don't have a lot of cases interpreting our state constitution because for so many years, people were using the federal courts and the federal judiciary to rule on civil rights laws and constitutional issues. And so it's almost an invitation by some of these state Supreme Courts, and I think we've seen that this year, that there is a little bit of pushback, that states are increasingly correctly interpreting protections within their state constitutions when it comes to religion and government. And we also are increasingly calling out the tactics by the other side. So the groups that are working to institute Christian nationalism, rather than let them work in the shadows to implement what they're trying to do, we've been more overt in telling courts exactly what's going on and calling them out on it. And finally, if some of the work we do, you don't have to take my word for it that FFRF is fighting on the front lines and making progress. We have the former, and it feels great to say, former State Superintendent of Public Instruction, Ryan Walters. And Annie Laurie referenced this morning. He sued FFRF. He filed that lawsuit this year. And you may also remember him because he's the person who has tried to mandate that teachers implement Bible instruction, and he wanted to spend $3 million of state money in Oklahoma to purchase what people call the Trump Bible, the God Bless the USA Bible. And so why did Ryan Walters sue FFRF? That's actually a really good question. I don't know. But he said that we have addressed constitutional violations in Oklahoma public schools, and we wrote letters to school districts to address those issues. And largely they agreed with us, and they stopped violating the First Amendment. And he said that that interfered with his state duties as superintendent. So we filed a response pointing out the obvious, that as a group, we have a free speech right to tell a government school district that what they're doing is wrong and what they're doing is illegal. And as you also heard, in August, a federal judge appointed by Donald Trump dismissed Walters' lawsuit. And so we prevailed. And so this is some of the overall themes from this year. We have a few other panelists here that will speak to you. And next up will be FFRF's Deputy Legal Director, Liz Cavell, to talk about our education work.
Thank you, Patrick, and hello again, everyone. As Patrick just described, and as most of you are well aware, our Supreme Court continues to issue rulings that expand the rights of conservative Christians at the expense of the Establishment Clause, as well as the civil rights of everyone else. So our team continues to work tirelessly to advance our legal mission through litigation in state and federal courts, and through advocacy on the hundreds of complaints we receive from members of the public about local violations. But our attorneys don't stop there, because we realize that the fight to keep state and church separate is also happening in the court of public opinion. And so I'm going to take a few minutes just to recognize all of the legal education work that our team has done over the past year. This is, non-legal, non-traditional attorney work, but it's vitally important. So our attorneys write pieces, they blog, they talk to reporters, they record video content, they podcast, they give presentations, they use their expertise to educate people on why the separation of church and state is so vitally important, how it's under threat, and what we can all do to protect it. So many of you know, our legal team produces We Dissent. We Dissent is a monthly podcast. It's in its 4th year of production. And it was started as a project not only to bring the topic of state-church separation into the legal affairs podcast space, but to highlight the voices of women attorneys in the secular movement. It has always been a coalition effort. It is currently a joint production of Americans United and the Freedom from Religion Foundation. It's hosted by me and FFRF alum and my best bud, Rebecca Markert. She's the current AU legal director. We Dissent's on every podcast platform. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky. The podcast published its 47th episode just this week, and it has more than 89,000 downloads. This past year, the podcast covered in depth the religion cases that Patrick was talking about that the Supreme Court heard this past term. We covered the crisis pregnancy center industry. We covered executive orders of the current administration, healthcare sharing ministries, creationism and 10 Commandments being pushed in public schools, and more. We also interview guests, usually women, experts in their fields and experts on issues relating to secularism. So this past year, we interviewed journalist Sarah Posner, Crisis Pregnancy Center expert Jennifer McKenna, AU Public Policy VP Dina Schur, secular policy advocate Sarah Levin, And I want to shout out Greta Martins, who you saw earlier. She's our legal office manager and also is key to ensuring that We Dissent gets published every month. So, FFRF's attorneys also regularly write for FFRF's blog site, Free Thought Now. Our team contributes at least one blog per month about relevant legal issues or analysis on timely topics in the news. Just some of the topics our attorneys publish blogs on about this past year. You see a little sampling here, breaking down each of the Supreme Court cases involving religion clauses, explaining their effect on our rights, explaining little known or little understood court cases of significance to a broader audience, explaining the harms being caused by the Christian nationalist movement, especially undoing the last 100 years of civil rights progress, highlighting the continued onslaught of religious coercion in public schools, and much more. I also would like to recognize targeting the legal profession as an audience is also a tool we are always keeping in mind in our work to increase public education about the importance of secular government and secular policy. This past year, our staff attorney, Sammi Lawrence, co-authored a law review article with former FFRF legal fellow Dante Harutunian on the legality of same-sex marriage in American Samoa. It was just published in the American University Journal of Gender, Social Policy, and the Law last month. Yes. Sammi. That's another way our legal team educates on the vital work we do is by public speaking engagements. Many of you know and have seen us throughout the country. Our attorneys speak at FFRF chapter gatherings, national and regional conferences and conventions, other gatherings of local secular groups, continuing legal education seminars to fellow attorneys and judges, and pretty much anything we get invited to do. This year, our attorneys gave about a dozen such presentations to various groups and gatherings throughout the country. We spoke this year to groups and gatherings in Minnesota, in Wisconsin, Illinois, Florida, Louisiana, Colorado, and Texas. You can see here just a few photos from some of these presentations, including Sammi Lawrence and Kyle Steinberg, who are both here, pictured there with Mickey Dollins. They all traveled to Dallas for the National Religious Freedom in Public Schools Strategy Summit, a very important topic in Texas, and hosted a workshop there. And finally, most of our members also know FFRF's weekly live show, Ask an Atheist. The show features a wide variety of topics relating to our mission, and many episodes feature our legal staff sharing their insights and expertise. I'll also share, as Annie Laurie teased, that Ask an Atheist is or has recently been relaunched as Secular Spotlight, which can be found under that name on our YouTube channel. It will also be a mostly weekly show going forward. But our attorneys appear frequently on the weekly show. FFRF legal staff appeared in about 88% of our shows this past year. And I'm just going to share a couple of clips to illustrate our attorneys' appearances on Ask an Atheist. First is a clip featuring our rapid legal counsel / photographer, Chris Line, discussing trends in demographic data with Hemet Meta.
It's not necessarily about, getting the religious number lower so much as it is about what that means and what that can mean for society, and hopefully having a more reasonable world where we take care of each other more and we don't have the sort of issues that come from our very religious society and Christian nationalism specifically.
And this is why all those moral questions, even about, what do you think about environmental protections, things like that, when you see that the least religious Americans are the more supportive of a social safety net and environmental regulations and stuff, this is the consequence of people ditching organized religion. It is a better chance to get a world that is better for everybody. And again, you're right. Like, we don't win an award if the number of atheists goes up to 90%. But based on what we're seeing in the data, if more people became non-religious, that could be good when it comes to what that means for the world around us, how we take care of each other, because the most religious Americans clearly, based on the numbers, do not want to take care of people who don't belong to their tribe.
Hear, hear. Another clip just from an episode featuring, again, our attorney Chris Line and me interviewing Andrew Seidel about the urgent threats facing our First Amendment in 2025.
Even saying, hey, religion is wrong or religion isn't important, which is what the Christian nationalists say and people like David Barton would use to attack us, it's just saying that you decide that on your own. And the state is not going to come in. We're not going to have politicians deciding the religious education of other people's children. We're going to leave that up to y'all if you so choose.
The fact that we've had secularism for so long and a secular government is probably what kind of hurts people from realizing that issue. You know, they think, oh, well, when we put religion into schools, it's going to be my religion, obviously. Like, there's not going to be any, like, issue. We're all going to be on the same page about what we do here. You know, it's been, because we've had our secular country, they're not aware, they don't realize, they're not thinking ahead to, oh, what problems are going to come up when, like, we do let the state decide religion in our schools and decide what religion should be favored and what specific religious ideology should be taught and this and that and everything. I think we're kind of a victim of our own success in that way.
It's kind of like
100%.
It's kind of like vaccines in that way, where like you don't know a world without, you know, the peace and the success and the health that like this thing has brought you. So you can't see the dangers of changing or weakening the system. So that's just a small illustration and recognition of the non-legal work that our team does to inform the public about the importance of our mission. And we're always thinking about telling that story in all of the legal work that we do as well, which you're about to hear more about. So I'm gonna now turn it over to Sammi Lawrence. She's our hardworking intake team attorney, and she'll take you through the highlights from our legal advocacy work this past year. Ooh, thank you.
Hello. As Liz mentioned, I am Sammi Lawrence, and I am the intake staff attorney here at FFRF. And I'm here today to give you an overview of our non-litigation advocacy since the last convention. Over the last year, we were able to resolve 216 constitutional violations just by sending a letter of complaint. And most of those violations were in the public schools, but we know that there are victories that schools and other government entities never bother to tell us about because they just ghost us. So we likely have even more victories than that confirmed number. And in total, we have sent 588 letters. As you can see, our letters are concentrated in a handful of states. Some of these frequent flyers are probably states you'd expect to be well represented. And I'll now give a brief survey of some complaints we've addressed in the past year. Starting out in North Carolina, legal fellow Kyle Steinberg successfully intervened when an elementary school within the Davidson County Schools allowed a Christian band, the Three Heath Brothers, to perform religious songs and distribute Christian literature during a school assembly. And we have a lovely clip of some of their beautiful Christian music for you.
We need revival. We need revival.
You can see why they're so incredibly popular. In response to Kyle's letter, the superintendent said that the Three Heath Brothers had tricked the school and told them that it would be an anti-bullying event. The district claimed to be unprepared for the religious music and materials that were distributed. In response to our letter, the superintendent emphasized that the distribution of religious literature was against school policy and the law, and staff members had been reminded of that, and the district's attorney provided guidance to the school board regarding the sharing of religious literature, and the principal requested that the Three Heath Brothers remove the video of the assembly from their Facebook account.